What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, and of OnlyFans celebrity. We are here to take a break from talking about the playoffs because the NBA draft lottery is coming up, Mort. And so we have a really complex, scientific, data-backed question that we are going to ask and then use it to talk about all these teams that will be in the running for the lottery. That question, everybody buckle up, strap in if you haven't already. Which of these teams...
Wait. You need to build it up some more. Come on. You need to build it up even more than that.
Look,
this has to be life-changing to everyone listening in. You're already on track. Like, just bring it home, Dan.
The answer to this question will quite literally determine whether the NBA exists in the next 5 years.
Right. The fate of the universe, actually.
Which NBA draft lottery team, Mort, needs Cooper Flagg the most? Unquestioned number one top prospect. He's going number one. I know everyone's probably just, they can't even wrap their heads around how mind-melting that question was. So we're going to go through each of these teams and just talk about it. We'll deliver our verdict at the end as the one team where we're kind of just looking at, I don't know if there's any notes you want to add before we dig in here, but we're just looking at the setup of the team where it's not where necessarily, I guess I'm factoring in everything when I looked at this in prep for it. It's, yeah, okay, the Cooper Flagg fit, but like, do they have any other blue chip cornerstones on the roster? Like a team like, let's use the Spurs as an example. They win the lottery and have Cooper Flagg. That kind of feels like cheating. Like they don't need Cooper Flagg. Like, yeah, he might be fun as hell there, but the need level of Cooper Flagg is not as high for a team that might not have, let's say, the face of its future or a candidate for that spot in place.
I love how you look at it through that prism because I have attacked it from a different approach. I'm looking at the state of a franchise, not in terms of like roster construction, but like how sad is your franchise really?
Isn't that like the same thing?
Is it though?
Well, because the Spurs aren't going to rank high on your sadness scale, are they?
Correct, they're not.
I just proved that point then.
That's true. But like there are other situations there, and also like goodwill. Like sometimes it's like, for example, do I want to reward the Philadelphia 76ers with this? Do I want to give them a bailout option here?
But I don't again, they're a team that has cornerstone options in place already, though. So I feel like
that's true.
We're tackling it from different perspectives, but I feel like we're going to end up with close to this. I bet you I could pick which team. I could narrow it down to one or two, like two or three teams that I know you're going to select as beneath them. But let's go through this exercise rather than spoil it. We begin, speaking of sad franchises, with the Charlotte Hornets. They have a 14% chance of winning the lottery. One of three teams that have a 14% chance. When you look at this is the team that I could see ourselves disagreeing on. That's for sure. When you look at what they have in place, where it feels like the base of their core is Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, and that's it. Like you can't throw Tijon Salon in there, and you definitely can't throw Mark Williams in there when they tried to trade him. So that's just it. Like who else you want? KJ Simpson? You want to throw him in there more?
KJ Simpson.
I mean, it'd be nice if he passed every once in a while, but anyway,
that'd be nice. Yes.
Here's my thing. But like, let's ask, I guess, this question on a scale of sort of 1 to 10. Like, what is their need level for the Cooper Flagg experience?
Oh, their need is up there. Like, what is that? Like 8.5?
Okay.
Of course. I mean, look, this is a franchise that has been just irrelevant for so long, injury plagued, have a guy on the roster who shouldn't even play in the NBA, so it leaves everyone with a sour taste in their mouth whenever he plays. So like everything is just bad. They need something good. Yeah, absolutely. The Hornets fans deserve something nice, something they can root for. And a local product in that way, well, I say local. I know he's from Maine, but like he played at Duke. You know, that counts.
They drink Poland Spring in Charlotte. Same difference. You're good.
Right. Yeah, bingo. There you go.
What's interesting about that is I agree. I feel like Charlotte Hornets fans deserve like a product that is, one, not injury prone, and then two, actively good to root for.
Yeah.
I do think the level of need you assigned and like needing to win the lottery, it really does depend on, well, how do you feel about LaMelo Ball and or Brandon Miller? Because this team has at least shown, at least so far under this front office, that they're not going to short circuit the process. But if you don't think that between LaMelo and Brandon Miller, you can assemble a sustainable playoff contender around them, then that need for Cooper Flagg is higher. Because I do think there are some teams on this where you look at them and say, oh, they have, like, that's the Wemby is the, like, they have the guy in place. Or even if you don't like the guy, like if the Hawks could win the lottery, which they cannot, well, they can win. The pick will just go to San Antonio. You may not like Trae Young, but you know that you can build a team around him that will get to the playoffs. With Charlotte, there's not a ton of proof of concept here, and injuries have really, short-circuited that for sure. I tend to be higher on LaMelo than consensus, and so I don't think they need...
Yes, you are.
I don't think they need him as much to where it's this franchise will not be stuck in the desert if they don't have Cooper Flagg and they have to start looking at some of the other prospects on the board.
You do realize that if the Hornets do get Cooper Flagg, you and I, the biggest spousal debate we have, that dies. Like, you and I will be friends again immediately, because I've said repeatedly that I don't think LaMelo is like the number one guy on a good team. Like, I don't think he's got that. But, and you're sort of disagreeing with me on that because you're saying if he's healthy, and I get it. But that whole conversation just goes out the window, because if Cooper Flagg is there, he's going to be number one. He's going to be the primary.
I agree. I want to make clear. I don't disagree with anything he said.
Yeah.
Do you think LaMelo is capable of scaling down to being like the number 2 or number 1B, whatever you want to say?
That is a really good question that I don't have the answer for. I hope so. But given that he makes a lot of questionable decisions, and isn't necessarily a guy who is, to use a Captain America phrase, will lay down on fire for his soldiers. I don't know. I don't know. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that LaMelo, because he'll be 24 later this year, kind of matures a little bit and goes, oh, you know what? This guy's the real deal. Let's just ride that wave, because I've been sort of on irrelevant teams ever since I made it here. Winning is the priority in the NBA. And if LaMelo insists upon individual glory over team success, I'd be worried as fuck.
I don't think there might be an adjustment period. I think he can scale down. I would be curious to see, though, if the team does start looking at, well, if they have Cooper Flagg, do we look at moving LaMelo? And I probably wouldn't. Like, I at least want to see it in action, but you would run the risk of, okay, his value's probably not too high right now, strictly because of the injuries. There's the inefficiency stuff. Some people don't like the play style. That would become an interesting exercise. I will say, if they could just get a good defensive center in Charlotte, I would pay absurd amounts of money to watch that center defend with Brandon Miller and Cooper Flagg on the court, because that, like, Cooper Flagg and Brandon Miller as like a base defense, like not your, back line, like that has the chance to be insane.
Which I don't want to go too far on this because we're already over our allocated time limit on each team, but I know that I'm in the minority on this one. I still think there could be a solid defensive center in Mark Williams pending health. He's only 23. We know bigs take some time. We know that he's had some issues there. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it and say he's a good defensive player, although I do think he has moments. I think that's fair to say. I don't think he is like a complete nonsense player defensively. I don't think that would be fair whatsoever. The rebounding alone as well is elite, and that helps. That kind of finishes off defensive possessions. So I think there's something there. But again, you need him to be healthy. You also need him to be motivated. And I'm sort of at that mind that Mark Williams potentially could be looking around the league after having that deal rescinded. And maybe this is also not the best situation for him to develop. So it's like, I feel as though with Cooper Flagg, if he gets there, it just resets everything. That allows him to say, okay, culture reset from here on out. The guys we don't like, the work ethic of some players that we don't like, everyone is now expendable outside of Cooper Flagg. It just resets everything.
I think I don't know that I would call Miller or LaMelo expendable in that scenario, but I get it. Like, I understand the sentiment. I'd probably want to see them all together, though, before I got that far. Our next team also has a 14% chance of winning the lottery, the Utah Jazz. They just extended Will Hardy, who there were murmurings around the league that the Spurs would make a run at him, and he signs a 6-year extension. I wonder, this is totally tangential, but I wonder how much was, the Spurs maybe checked in before going with Mitch Johnson, and that like Will Hardy maybe used that as leverage to get the extension, but they had picked up his option like for 2026, 2027 this past year. So I think this was always headed there. I think you could make the case though, and this, when you get to talk to Need about Cooper Flagg more, I think you can make the case that right now, Will Hardy is this team's best building block. And that's problematic when you're looking at how many seasons removed we now are from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades. And look, part of that might be Will Hardy's fault. He's definitely a really good coach on offense, and the Jazz were better than expected for the first half of the previous 2 seasons. Now they've finally tanked a full year. I guess the only way that you could disagree that they're sort of at like DEFCON 1 in terms of looking for a face of the future is you either have to believe that it's Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, or that you have that high of an opinion of Lauri Markkanen.
John Collins slander. No, I'm kidding. Yes.
Cody Williams is going to have one of my big board last year.
I mean, look, there's something so funny about the idea of them winning Cooper Flagg, because Markkanen to me is still a 4. John Collins only a 4. Kenyon Martin Jr. best as a 4. Taylor Hendricks best as a 4. Kyle Filipowski strictly a 4. And Cooper Flagg obviously also to me projects way more as a 4 than the 3. So it's like, all right, maybe this is just like the new age Jazz. Let's start 3 or 4. Screw it. 4 power forwards. Why not?
What would that be relative to Houston, to where it's like, and we've had some discussion in our Discord that people think Tari Eason does a lot of the big man stuff, which is fair, but they're playing Jabari, Şengün, and Adams together with then a Tari Eason. But it's like, those are 2 centers plus a 4-5 and then a 3-4. And if the Jazz are just running out all 4s.
All 4s. All 4s. I mean, look, and look, the t-shirts alone, all 4 on all 4s. There we go. It'd be fantastic. But look, from a franchise perspective, let's not beat around the bush here. From a franchise perspective, getting a white superstar in Utah, perfect. Just no notes. That would be huge for both the league and for them, because we all know that is something that has been an issue for a long time. I would say perfect fit, but in terms of the need, I don't know, because I don't know what the fuck this roster is.
But that's Doesn't that increase the need? Because what is their guiding force right now? Who is the
Lauri
player?
Markkanen. That's the
problem. But that's a problem. And Lauri Markkanen, look, you could make him and Cooper Flagg work if you're trying to be competitive soon.
You can.
So
yes.
all the pieces around them become instantly fungible. I think not only are you looking at a roster that's bereft of that number 1 guy of the future, but you're looking at an impatient fan base because of how many seasons. What are we, like? We're 3 summers removed from Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell being shipped elsewhere. What was that, 2022? Is that what that was? So we're about to go to summer 4 then?
Oh my God, this is his 3rd year?
Donovan Mitchell's been in Cleveland for...
This is his 3rd year, right?
But we're going to have to double check that. I don't know what is time anyway more. But yeah, so Donovan Mitchell just wrapped up his 3rd season in Cleveland. So
I'm pretty sure.
Traded him in the summer of 2000 or like that off season. So now you've gone through, this will be your 4th off season since technically kicking off the rebuild, or 3rd, excuse me. I'm sorry. Can't do math. And to not have like even someone that you would stand there and identify as, well, this might be someone who can become. And there's a lot of, like, I think sometimes it's oversimplified as to why they're here. I think a lot of the reason they're here is for good things, like Lauri Markkanen turning into a borderline All-NBA player. And then some of the veterans just for contributing longer in that first season and at a higher level than you'd expected. With all of that said, you can't sit here after getting all those picks, moving so much, like just blowing it up, and to not even have, like, even on teams, if you don't believe that their number 1 option's in place, you can at least say, no, like that might be the dude. If we're fast forwarding 3 or 4 years, like you could see a pause. There is no one And I don't even know who has the best chance of being that. Like, if you even had to say, oh, it's going to be one of the players on the roster that will be the pole star around whom they build everything in 3 to 4 years, who are you picking? Is it Collier? Is it Keontae George? Like, honestly, who are you picking?
Oh God, that's depressing.
I'm going to pick Taylor Hendricks because I love that dude.
All right, you know what? You convinced me. So the need for them because of their situation, that's probably like a solid 9.5 maybe even.
And you could go higher, but I do think then you get to the point of like, I don't hate all of the youth on Utah. Like, I think Kyle Filipowski and Collier had like two of the more underrated rookies, especially Filipowski. I think he was what he did on offense this year was just nasty. But it does come what you also say, man, the roster gets tricky because of all the fours.
Right. So that is very high. Actually, so right now we have Utah in the lead. All right. Yeah.
We're on to the Washington Wizards. Yeah. Also a 14%. They are going to round out our 14 percenters. And generally speaking, you would expect the teams that have the highest chance of winning the lottery to need to win the lottery the most. This one's interesting, though, because I think they have two options when it comes to, if you were wondering who is their guiding force, in Bilal Coulibaly and even Alex Sarr. Sarr did not have the most efficient offensive season, right? But like, he showed some stretch, showed some defensive disruption. I think the passing, that was not something that I knew that he was going to be able to do right out of the gate here. As he gets stronger, I think he will become a better post defender, a better finisher around the basket. And I just love Coulibaly. Like, that dude came into the league just ready to defend anyone. And he's still kind of there. I think the swing skill for him will be
the shooting.
The shooting. I kind of dabbled in, can this person create for others a bunch? But I think I might rather see him as, if you could just get a set jumper, and then if you want him to make plays off the catch, where it's maybe out of the short roll, that might be for what and for all he can do on defense, I think that's enough. So they do have two options here. And then they also have, I like Bub Carrington a lot. Like the poise with which he could play on ball. And I really love Keyshawn George. I don't think you call him a cornerstone, but as someone who can do, I think, if the shot comes around, do a little bit of everything.
Right.
So I think some people might be surprised. If we're going on a scale of 1 to 10, I don't know where you're going to land. I'm probably at like, if 5 is average, they clearly need it more than just the average team because they're here at all. But I don't know, a 6, 6.5,
11, 12. And I'll tell you why. Because you look at it from a roster perspective, that's totally fair. This is a franchise where people don't care anymore, like at all. This is a franchise that might be one of the most, if not the most, irrelevant in the entire NBA. It is. I was there. I was in Washington over Christmas in 2014. This was at the height of the John Wall, Bradley Beal era. Nobody gave a fuck. Nobody gave a fuck except the hardcores. And funny enough, by the way, Brian was there. We didn't know at that point in time.
Throw some last names out there for the thousands of people listening who have no idea who Brian is.
Brian Toporek, our common friend, our mutual friend. So he was there, and like, I actually asked him later on, like, is this normal? He was like, yeah, Washington. It's like, okay, let's get some excitement back to the Wizards, because the last time they won a championship was in 1978. And they've only like sparingly been in the playoffs ever since. Like, no, first round loss here and there, like maybe made it to the second round. It's just, it's been really bad. It's been really bad. This is an organization. This is a fan base. This is everything that needs something else, that needs hope, that needs a light. It's not just about the roster, how it's currently constructed. It's not about their cap sheet. It's not about their direction. This is about a team that needs a reason to exist. 10, 11, 12 in terms of need.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I just don't know, is the hype around Cooper Flagg enough? Like, has he reached Wemby or Zion levels of hype coming out of college, that if you're viewing this from sort of an, like, you're looking at this as an existential crisis, is that going to be enough to, like, I don't know, change your opinion of how much the public cares? about the Wizards. I don't.
I
You
think
could
it's a
look.
start.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
a
sorry. You
start.
could make a case that like New Orleans has Zion, and that hasn't necessarily raised the Pelicans, or at least hasn't convinced ownership to invest competently in the organization. So I just, it's tough for me to look at it from a non-basketball perspective, because I think if you're to look at it from a basketball perspective, do you still assign so much value to them needing Cooper Flagg?
Because he's Cooper Flagg and he's an organizational star, presumably, of what we know. That is the spectrum of which we analyze this through. Yes, because there's going to be a ripple effect. If he is that tier 1 superstar, more stars are going to latch on. They're going to build a competitive product. It's not going to be John Wall and Bradley Beal. It's going to be something better, something that can capture the imagination of Wizards fans. When is the last time we've ever been able to say that?
Here's my thing with that, though. Well, I think it's fair to look at it that way. You're basically saying that what they have in place can't ever, the outcome of that is zero, then, is what you're saying. If you're saying they need Cooper Flagg, because you're not that, you're saying that Alex R, but because this is about basketball, capturing the imagination. So, like, by you putting them at an 11 and the Jazz at a 9, you're saying to me that there's more of a chance that the Utah coalesces into something special.
No, I understand why you look at it like that. I think I'm basically putting more of an onus on this is a team that's gone nowhere. At least Utah has had moments during like Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer era where they made it to the Western Conference Finals, right? They made it to the finals back to back in 97, 98, right? So like they've had playoff success. They've been to the playoffs. They made it pretty far. They've had consistent playoff appearances where we can sort of pencil them in as a top 5, sometimes top 4 seed. We can't say that about the Wizards. Not really. I think the entire story, narrative, whatever you want to call it, around the franchise is where I differ between the two of them. So while I understand your point from a roster perspective, I do think more highly of how the Wizards are building right now than I do the Jazz. It's a feeling. It's the feeling, Dan, of where those organizations are presently.
I'm all for injecting like the emotional component into this too. And I think part of the reason I would have the Wizards, I have them lower, is also because I trust the direction that the front office is headed in, to where it's okay. Right. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's say they don't get Cooper Flagg. The previous front office regime is probably going out there and giving up everything they have to trade for, I don't know, like Kyle Kuzma again or something. And this one, no, they're going to continue to build gradually. And if that Cooper Flagg isn't already in place, that Polestar, they're going to give themselves enough bites at the draft apple to ensure that they go. And I also trust them more to develop what's already in place. And so that's why it's tough for me to say from an interest perspective. I think there are a ton of teams that could fit, like a Cooper Flagg comes in and it gives you this polarizing presence around which to rally the fan base while you're still bad. I agree with you that Cooper Flagg probably does that for Washington more than Koulibaly or Alex R, for sure. Right. Our next team has a 12.5%. Speaking of irrelevant franchises, by the way, has a 12.5%. And I'm allowed to say that because I was so high on the Pelicans too many times, only for them to, blow my brains out. They have a 12.5% chance of winning the lottery. David Griffin gone. Joe Dumars in. There's still talent on this roster.
Yeah.
I just have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And I think Zion Williamson's a borderline top 10 player when he's available.
Yeah.
Don't get to
keyword.
Available is the key word. I mean, whose durability are you worried about more, Zion's or LaMelo? It's probably Zion's at this point. So
because he's better. Yes. Yeah.
So you're worried about, well, so you want Melo to be unavailable is what you're saying? That's kind of a cheap shot. I feel like they need Cooper Flagg. Like I would put them around an 8 to where it's okay. Yeah. You have Zion, so you still have a chance that if he's healthy, this is the guy. But I don't know that you could say you're closer to having the guy than Charlotte. You could say it than Utah just because there's at least someone with that level of talent. However, when you look at the direction of the franchise, and maybe you disagree, like maybe the argument would be, no, like they don't need Cooper Flagg because nothing here is going to change. But like if you got Cooper Flagg, I feel like it steers you in a very clear direction. Whereas kind of right now, regardless of who they end up with, if it's not Cooper Flagg, you're still sort of just billowing in the wind.
Right. So where do we put them on a number?
So the rankings right now, well, I guess we have different rankings, but like they're definitely for me. So I guess you're assuming, are they higher or lower for you than the Wizards would be the question.
No, I see. Yeah, I think they're lower. I think again, we're talking about the Wizards for me, where I'm like, does this team have a reason to exist? So like, I think that's why it's so crucial. I'm not quite there with the Pelicans, also because the Zion factor is still there. It's still alive for as long as it is. We'll see what happens this summer. 6.5. And also, if they do pivot off Zion after getting the Cooper Flagg pick,
is that what you do if you're them? By the way,
I'm not saying I'm not saying that's what they should do.
I was asking.
No, I mean, if they do, what if they get something in there that actually sets it up to Flagg long term? Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Well, that's what I was almost assuming was that just gives them a clear direction as let's just rebuild everything around him. Because, by the way, if you're worried about Cooper Flagg playing with Larry Markkinen, you certainly need to be worried with him playing next to Zion Williamson, no?
Yeah. No, the archetype of Flagg and Zion are eerily similar. Like sketchy long-range shooters, although Flagg projects to be better. But both playmaking fours. Flagg obviously defensively far better on that end, where I think Zion offensively has by far the edge, at least right now. But yeah, positional overlap times 2, right? It's not as egregious as Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, but we're up there.
So, I still think of all the teams we've talked about, this will be the best way to frame it. I still have Utah at the top of my list of they would need Cooper Flagg the most because the Zion component here is just so tough to reconcile. If you don't, and it doesn't seem like, Shamit Dua just published another sort of info dump on the Pelican situation. It doesn't seem like there was actually a prerequisite of Jumar's taking the job that he had to trade Zion, but that's just sort of kind of out there. Is Zion even happy there? Do the Pelicans even want him? And how good? And how do you build a team where you don't know if an all NBA top 10 type player, you don't know whether he's going to be available. So how do you go about building your team? It seems like one of David Griffin's cardinal sins was he tried to build a team that could thrive or at least be good without Zion. And then it deviated too far away of optimizing Zion. But how do you justify, we need to optimize Zion if Zion's not going to play in 65 games every year?
Yeah. And that's where the need comes in, because we can sit here and talk about, well, do they really need him if Zion is there? But you're right. If Zion plays 25, 27 games per year, what the fuck does it matter? Then he's not there. No, you're right. You know what? Did I say 6.5? I'm going to up it. You're right. It's not up to my Washington levels, though. I'm probably going to go up to 7.5.
So Mort has the Wizards as number 1 so far, and I have the Jazz.
I still do.
Let's see if this next team can dethrone either of them. They have a 10.5% chance of winning the lottery, Mort. The Philadelphia 76ers, with over a 10% chance of winning the lottery, just like we all predicted at the start of the season. I mean, if you're going at it through the lens of, I don't trust this core together, Joel Embiid and Paul George are never going to live up to their contracts, Embiid is never going to be healthy again, you could argue the need is pretty urgent. But they also still have Tyrese Maxey. They have picks. They have, Daryl Morey, we know he's going to be aggressive in trying to make upgrades. So the need level, if you're the Sixers, you want to have the problem of let's keep the pick and then see, do we trade it? Do we draft and try and develop this player? I would argue, if you can get Cooper Flagg, I'm saying you get Cooper Flagg. Like if they had a choice, obviously.
Yes.
But winning the lottery almost complicates things for them because it's like, well, what are you supposed to do?
Because of the contracts, yes.
Well, it's because of the contracts, but it's like, are you just assuming, are you on Cooper Flagg's timeline now, or are you trying to develop Cooper Flagg around? You forget about Paul George.
Yes. Yeah. No. There should be no confusion about that. If you win the Cooper Flagg lottery, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, absolutely you're on Cooper Flagg's timeline right now. Yes, you are.
So you're out on Joel Embiid, is what
Yes, I am. And Paul George. Yes,
Paul
absolutely.
George is not the person. He's not like he never would have. Even if Paul George had a good year, you're not.
No, but like what I mean is like I'm just out on the veterans. I could also have said Eric Gordon. I'm just out on them trying to go out for win now players. You're switching things around. You're going into a rebuild. You are building around Tyrese Maxey, Cooper Flagg, Jared McCain. I presume Quentin Grimes as well. Yes, like that's your new starting point. Absolutely.
I think that would probably be the right call. So I do agree with you. I just don't think it's what they would do.
Maybe not. That's what they should do. That's what they should do.
If I was running the franchise, I guess the Maxey flip. But like if someone's willing to take Embiid, you're just trading him for what you could get. Because he's the type of player where if he's gonna play, and I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, but it's not gonna Tyrese Maxey blossomed around him, so maybe that's the wrong call. But like, he's not going to streamline Cooper Flagg's development. If anything, he might infringe upon it because I think Cooper Flagg is very much someone who needs plenty of touches to kind of make sure that he leaves a mark on the game offensively right now. And that's just with Maxey and Embiid, that's not going to be as readily available.
Right. Does that matter? Is that something we should think about?
I think everything's on the table here. I'm just saying it's weird because I don't believe that they would be on Cooper Flagg's timeline immediately if they won the lottery. I think they would either try and augment what they already have in place with Cooper Flagg, or they would probably, if of all the lottery teams, like they would be the most likely one to trade said number one pick, right? I don't think anybody would. I want to make that clear.
I mean, if I'm not closing the door on that because NBA franchises act in so many different ways. If you are married to this timeline of Embiid, Paul George, I guess Tyrese Maxey also, even though he's significantly younger, you just got to make sure it's the right deal, though. Like if
Devin Booker
pivoting, yeah, but like straight up, man. Even if you get Booker,
and also the problem you run into is, I'm assuming you look at that and say, okay, like Embiid or George has to be your matching salary going out.
Right.
And you're probably picking Paul George.
Oh, absolutely. But still, like, and then I'm probably also getting more in return. But do I even trust a Embiid, Book, Maxey, McCain, Grimes core?
That's so many guards. Do you
don't trust it.
That's a talented core. I wouldn't trust it defensively. For sure.
I wouldn't trust it to stay healthy. I wouldn't trust it to do a lot of things. It's, again, this Sixers team needs a bit of a blow up, not in terms of, like, from everyone older than Tyrese Maxey and up, like, yeah. Oh, well, with the exception of Quentin Grimes. I should say Quentin Grimes and up. Cooper Flagg would be the perfect excuse. But where do we put them, Dan? Are we putting them at 6.5, 6?
Our lowest score, I think, that we gave is I gave the Wizards a 6.5. But you could probably talk me into a 7. But that would be the
my highest because, yeah.
So, do they need it more than the Pelicans, who have Zion? So it's kind of there's a contrast there, but it's okay. The Sixers have Embiid and Maxey, and the Pelicans have Zion.
Right. No, they don't. You're right. That's the way to figure out the score here because you're right. Tyrese Maxey is far more available than Zion Williamson is. Granted, Zion is better when he's healthy, but I do think the difference isn't so egregious to the point where like, oh yeah, like he's levels ahead. Because we have a reasonably healthy Tyrese Maxey, and we also have a Jared McCain who, based off what we saw in the first year, looks like a keeper. If Quentin Grimes can duplicate what he did post-trade deadline, and I know there are a lot of funky numbers in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they're just not in that big of a need. You're right.
I think if we were to make the case that they need this more than anyone or as much as anyone, it's what you said before. They need a reason to blow it up. Like just an ironclad concrete reason. And Cooper Flagg's, I guess, about as ironclad as it would get to. I would argue, look, you could talk about McCain Grimes. Anyone but Maxey would just be dispensable to me if you have Cooper Flagg at that point. Next team up, they have a 9% chance of winning the lottery. The Brooklyn Nets. This is fascinating because they reacquired control over their next 2 first-round picks, 25 and 26. They paid a pretty good premium to get them. And they didn't have it before, but they certainly didn't have a candidate after trading Mikal Bridges. Cam Johnson is their best player. Unless if you want to argue for Cam Thomas or Nick Claxton, we can listen, but none of those guys.
No, you're right. You're right.
So the need is there. And it's also, I understand that I think they only owe one of their picks, right? In 2027 is the one that's going out. So it's not like there's this long break in between them not having draft picks, but there is the urgency of, in theory, you want to be good in time for the 2027 draft because you don't control that pick. So you kind of only have like these 2 bites or 2 chances to be really bad and capitalize on it. And not that they already missed. I mean, if anything, it's a testament to Jordi Fernandez, and they were fun to watch for pretty much the entire season. But the fact that you don't have one of the top 4, top 5 lottery odds spots, I do think some people would paint that as a failure. But regardless, the need forget about the profile of Cooper Flagg off the court, which you brought up in Washington. Although if you want to compete with the Knicks in terms of interest, sure. Like you just need you need a building block. You don't have that primary centerpiece right now.
From a roster perspective, the need here is at a 15 out of 10. From a market perspective, because this is still New York, it's like 2 out of 10. Like they will get guys because it's New York, and
they can have over $80 million in cap space this year if they want it. I don't think they're going to go for that much, but they can they have more cap space. It's not just than anyone, but like they could triple up the next closest team, which is basically the Pistons at this point.
Right. So like it's the contrast is pretty fun because you're absolutely right from a roster perspective. It's egregious. Like this screams Cooper Flagg in terms of like the biggest need for sure. But again, I have to factor in, just because of who I am, I have to factor in the organizational circumstances. And given that this is a team that can sleepwalk itself to free agent acquisitions, I'm just not overall in that big of a, we need something. Like they'll manage.
So I would put them below the Jazz for sure, who are my number 1 team so far, because of basically everything you mentioned. And also, I really think the time component in Utah needs to matter more, to where this was the 3rd season. I couldn't figure out the math before in terms of, but like this was technically the 3rd season of the rebuild. With Brooklyn, this was rebuilding year number 1. And so you're prepared to be like bad. And I know the Jazz still have a ton of other first-round picks, but they're also, you mentioned this with the free agency stuff, let's just say that you were willing to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo this summer. Brooklyn can do that, I think, with more confidence that he would, 1, stay past his current contract, and 2, they would have the ability to reel in other guys for Giannis than Utah to say, even if you like Utah's asset stash more. Like, I think it would be harder. This might be the perfect way to frame it. It would be harder for Utah to make a trade for Giannis and accelerate their timeline this summer after year 3 of their rebuild than it would for Brooklyn to say, you know what, we won the lottery. Like, let's just dangle Cooper Flagg and see if that gets us Giannis. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying they could. I think
they could. They can go all in right now. It's funny because I've closed that door pretty thoroughly, but that's a really good point, actually, because who they are, they can utilize the size of their market and the level of attraction they have from agencies and certain star players to sort of make a very quick retool. That'd be fun. That'd be interesting.
I don't think if they had Cooper Flagg, I'm not trading him for Giannis. And really, to me, that's the only way they could get Giannis, because Milwaukee, unless they're getting control of their like picks back, and Portland has, I think, 3 swap rights from them. Excuse me. Like the Nets don't even have players that you can send the Bucks so that they're still good. Right. You need that balance of a package, and their balance right now is skewed heavily towards, hey, we don't need to send any money back in return. So it's cap relief and draft equity, which it matters, but when you're the Bucks and you don't control your own first round pick, it doesn't matter as much. Too far afield, but I can't separate myself. Like I get what you're saying about the other. They have time on their side, I guess, and then the mechanisms that will be, or machinations that'll be available to them as like being in the Brooklyn market, but you just don't have anyone to point to. And so I think they might be like, maybe behind the Pelicans, who would be my number 2 team so far behind the Jazz. But like they're up there. I think Brooklyn's my number. You have that name in there, and you don't have anyone else who even begins to check that box.
Yeah, I think you're right because of that. Just the rosters. Yeah, I can get there.
Well, what would you put them above or below the Jazz? Because you have the Wizards at 11. So I'm assuming you have the Nets below the Wizards. Do you think that Brooklyn needs it more than Utah?
Well, where did I put Utah? That was a solid 8.5, I believe I said. From a roster perspective, absolutely. I think, that's close. Yeah, probably just inches. Yeah.
I'm still going to put Utah ahead just because they're year 3 into it. Okay. And so I think that there could be more patience in Brooklyn, but I think that's an interesting debate. Utah or Brooklyn, who needs it more so far? Our next team coming in with a 7.5% chance of winning the lottery. The Toronto Raptors. Mort, where are you at with them and how much do they need to win the number 1 pick? And are they, I did say, isn't Philly, if they won it? I'm not saying any team would, but which team is most likely to win the number 1 pick and then trade it? I'm now kind of wondering if Toronto should be the answer to that question.
I mean, look, they've committed to a core where, frankly, I don't love the fit with the Brandon Ingram acquisition. Not really sure what they're trying to do. They are going to start 3 small forwards next year unless they make some alterations over the course of summer. This would be one. Scotty Barnes, Cooper Flagg, a lot of overlap there. A lot of overlap. I don't think Cooper is going to be like a day 1 big time NBA scorer. I think that's going to be like a year 2 for him. Scotty has yet to develop that, that real high level scoring instinct. Like I hate the funkiness of the roster, but there's a lot of quality there, so I can't say that. From a roster perspective, like they're in major need of an upgrade.
If you're just looking at it individually,
the
level of talent between Cooper Flagg, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Poeltl, RJ Barrett, Grayson Dick, the names continue. So it's like, all right, that's not an intuitive top 7, but that's certainly a top 7.
Yeah, exactly. So you can look at it through that, but the raw fit of it all, that just seems messed up. That's just going to complicate it even more. Or maybe it streamlines it. Maybe they'll go, we finally have our 4, and then they move Scotty to the 3. Then I don't know what they do with. Well, Ingram is probably. What the hell did they do with Ingram? Oh God, why did they trade for Ingram? That was such a dumb move.
I'm from a value play, just looking at what they gave.
All right, fair enough. I hate the extension. I should clarify. It's the extension I hate.
I don't even know that I
was bidding on him at $40 million a year.
Okay, I agree, but we kind of know that that's not how free agency in the NBA works for some reason.
I know, but still,
I look, the number was a little high for me, but I think the fact that it's 3 years almost works in their favor because it immediately becomes this short-term contract after next season.
Even so, I'm not a big fan of the fit.
I'm not a big fan of the fit, but I am encouraged because the way that they use RJ Barrett, getting him moving off the ball, and that's not.
Yep, agree.
It's probably something. To be fair, it's probably something he would have liked to have done more in New York, but it's not. They weren't.
Well, where does that leave Scotty?
With Cooper Flagg in the mix? Because right now it seems like they're just going to they're going to figure out a way to have people orbit around Scotty and still leave him as the focal point. And then Brandon Ingram is probably, I like Emmanuel Quickly, but as of right now, he's their second best from scratch.
Or do you trade Barnes?
If you get Flagg?
Yeah.
But then, what was the point of trading for Ingram? Because then you're on an even longer timeline.
Then you have your offensive-minded 3-man.
I don't know. Wow.
Look, I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying, look, if you want something that's a little bit of a cleaner fit, maybe it's Barnes. Also because Barnes has a lot of value. He's on a fun max.
So here's what I would do. I would absolutely love to see them play together. And I think that you bet on, we've seen flashes of the Scotty Barnes, set or gradual pull-up jumper going in from beyond the arc. You hope that that's enough to work itself out. Or if I'm going to reorient anything, it's I'm surrounding Barnes and Cooper Flagg with a bunch of Emmanuel Quickly types. Go get a floor spacing 5. Chris Boucher gets a max. in this scenario, so they come back and just chuck threes. But they would be, I want to say they would be one of the more interesting Cooper Flagg destinations, but I can't get there with need.
Right. No, me neither. So when the Raptors and Jazz play each other, will it be like 8 forwards starting out of the 10?
Well, they both have Cooper Flagg in this. I guess.
No, look, Utah isn't short on forwards as is.
Now,
they won't have to.
If we're talking about the battle of the power forward types between Toronto and Utah, Toronto needs Cooper Flagg a lot.
Yeah.
Like they need if you want to get on Utah's level of like fours, you need Cooper Flagg. I want to see now. I'll see Cooper Flagg on any of these teams, but Toronto would be just to see how they would react. I think that so far that might be the most fascinating. Oh, what does this mean for team? Even more so than Philly, right? Or would you say Philly's more interesting than Toronto in that vein?
No. Philly isn't interesting at all.
We move on to this. Interesting. 6.7% chance of winning the lottery. The San Antonio Spurs. 6% is their own, and then the Hawks have a 0.7% chance of winning the lottery, and the Spurs.
We can skip this pretty quickly. There's not a damn need for anything here, but it would be fun as hell if it happened.
Okay. Yes. All that, yes. I just want to highlight one concern I would have.
Yes.
I don't think this is a macro problem, but you've already made yourself so dependent on Victor Wembanyama being a floor spacer. And if you want him to have paint touches, having Steph Castle, Cooper Flagg, and De'Aaron Fox on your roster is not the way to go about it.
You don't have this word in the States. It's something we call fly fucking. Basically, it means it doesn't matter. You're kind of
just. That sounds like having intercourse with insects, is what it sounds to me.
Well, it's basically two insects having sex, and it doesn't matter. It's pointless. So it's basically the point of this is you're picking on a threat here that just goes virtually nowhere because all right, shooting concerns, big whoop. You figure it out. The talent level here would be so ridiculous. Even if you have to trade Stephon Castle for a better fit in terms of shooting and fit wise, you probably do that because you just optimize Wemby and Flagg. Wemby as a shooting threat, I think we're all aligned that that's going to work out pretty well.
And to be fair, it does spare him from the wear and tear when you're looking at how lean he is. Even at his peak, bulkiness, he's still going to be relatively skinny, if not extremely skinny. And so you do spare him from the, let's have him not banging down low in the post. Even if you're rolling to the basket, that's going to be a more physical part of the game.
Right. Defensively, there is potential there between Flagg and Wembanyama to make Jared Allen and Evan Mobley look like Marcus Spicer and Eddie Curry. That's where we are.
And you add Castle to that too?
Yeah. Defensively, God.
How do you score on that team?
Fox too. He can Fox is slowed down defensively in recent years because he's had to carry such a major offensive load.
Yeah, he'll be guarding the fourth best player on the roster all of a sudden. Yeah,
that too. And
he'll turn into their version of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, probably.
I mean, look, there is no need here. The need is at 1.
Well, do they need him the least of any team that we've talked about by far, right?
Because they have Wemby.
It's any team in the lottery. I don't think unless you're really optimistic about the Sixers staying healthy, there's just no case for any other team.
Right. Agreed.
We move on then to our next team, which is with a 3.8% chance of winning the lottery, thanks to the Phoenix Suns, or I guess thanks to the Brooklyn Nets, or both of them, however you want to frame it, the Houston Rockets. This is interesting because if you think that Cooper Flagg is the type of offensive engine that they need, I think you could make a case that there's a real need here. But we've talked a lot about redundancies, maybe not so much with strengths, but with weaknesses. And you add Cooper Flagg to this roster of all rosters. Yeah. It's kind of just, it's like a less extreme version of what if they went and traded for Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Right. So it's fun because the need here is seen from a different priority level than, say, the Washington Wizards, Where with the Wizards, it's all about starting something. This is about finishing something. This is about completing something. This is about rounding out the roster to become a perennial championship contender. So, yes, from that point and from that perspective, the need is actually pretty big. I completely concede that point. But that said, look at who they have. Like that roster, especially at the forward positions, they're not lacking in quality. Ahmed Thompson is probably the team's best player. Tari Eason isn't far behind. You have a boner on for Jabari Smith Jr. Like this, they're not in need positionally at the least.
No, so I said this. I think this is well, maybe it's not because they've like taken a gradual approach, but like you could make a case that if they won the Cooper Flagg pick, would you just say, hey, here's Cooper Flagg, Jalen Green, and then you figure out the rest of the money, maybe picking up Fred VanVleet's team option, and it's give us Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Like, is that a move you're all of a sudden looking
at? No, because I like the depth.
I just gave up only 2 players from your rotation this past year. Like, and then you include, if you need to make the money work still, like Jock Landale's non-guaranteed.
Wait. Okay. I thought you assumed that more players were going out. So who am I left with?
No, if I'm Phoenix, I mean, and maybe you're giving Phoenix some of their picks back too. But it's the base of the deal would be is you could get away with it. Fred VanVleet, Cooper Flagg, and Jalen Green, and you're trading for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker.
No, I want sustainability.
Why isn't that sustainable?
Because Kevin Durant is 37 years old.
Then you're left with Devin Booker and still some of the Suns' other picks.
Love Devin Booker. But what if Cooper Flagg has the higher ceiling? We don't know that. That is something that...
Okay, that might be fair to ask, but are the Rockets an environment in which he would ever approach that higher ceiling? What is the pathway to Cooper Flagg actualizing himself, the best version of himself on this iteration of the Rockets?
Because we always know that when teams draft a guy and he becomes the best player, you kind of retailer the team around the best player. Why should we build off the assumption that the roster remains intact if we kind of know that Flagg is going to be like the main guy? Like if he doesn't fit,
by your logic, then they should make that Booker and Durant trade because you just said Ahmed Thompson's the best player on the roster.
I said he might be, but like if Cooper Flagg comes in from day one and is the best player, which is a possibility, we don't know. I could see a scenario where they go, oh, like we have 4 or 5 guys all in the same timeline who can give us a prolonged window, whereas trading for 37-year-old Kevin Durant, maybe not. Like, don't get me wrong. I get the allure of KD. I do. I absolutely do.
I think you're getting hung up on the KD of it all too much. I'm not saying they should go all in because of Kevin Durant. It's you're buying yourself time now and later because Devin Booker stuff. Like, I'm not trading Cooper Flagg just for Kevin Durant. You could also go pick which like package you want for the Rockets to go after. Cooper Flagg will get you it.
I would be more interested in like
LaMelo, I figured.
in like Giannis there, if anything.
What?
Again, you have to pivot, but like I know he's older than Book, but younger than KD.
It's not even like, the age, it's the fit. I'm just like, why not?
Again, you have to restructure things. You have to restructure things. Like even with the KD, I understand that your point is, oh, we can just slide in KD, we can just slide in Book. I get it, but I would want the best player.
Okay.
I mean, I would want a top what is Giannis, top 3?
No lower than 5th, probably.
Right. Even 5th sounds ridiculously low for him. Like,
yeah, I guess it has to be. I mean, well, because there's Jokic, there's Shea, and then I think like Luka this season, there's not really like a strong case.
No. Giannis over Luka this year for sure.
No, for this year, but I was talking about for this year, he was 3rd. It was just he's going to finish 3rd in MVP voting.
Yeah.
But like maybe Tatum has a case over him, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, over Luka, you mean, right?
No, he has a case over this season. Tatum has a case over Luka, but
yeah. But
regardless,
you don't mean over Giannis.
Let's say Giannis is no lower than 4th. Just like let's account for is Luka at any point or whatever.
Right.
So I get
But,
what
like-
you're saying about the talent play in a vacuum. I just
Oh yeah, no, the spacing sucks if we assume that there aren't going to be made follow-up moves. Yes.
especially if we also assume like, oh, are the contracts going out like some of your best floor spacers,
Right.
which would be Fred VanVleet or Jalen Green.
Right.
And they don't need Cooper Flagg. If they get
don't.
Cooper Flagg, that's just
We
an
went way
embarrassment.
too long on this one.
Yeah. The next team with a 3.7% chance, the Portland Trailblazers. Fun season. What's interesting about them, Mort, they're already good. Like we saw the size, the defense in action. Denny Avdia was great, ended up being great after a somewhat slow start for them. Donovan Clingan, that was very impactful. Who do you point to on this roster and say, okay, like that's the guy of the future? There's options. I think
Denny.
2 of them, maybe
Denny.
3, depending on how you feel about Denny Avdia. But I can't sit here and tell you that I think Scoot or Shaden Sharp is going to be that guy. I still don't know. And so that kind of, I think, increases their need.
Yeah.
They're almost in the Utah Jazz territory, but not as barren of options for sure.
I think Denny is the guy moving forward, but I also don't think we're looking at a version of him who is in the same potential bracket as Cooper Flagg.
Well, I think that's because I would say I'm probably holding out hope more for Scoot than anyone actually.
Okay.
But if you're going to say you think it's Denny, now you're running into the same problem that Utah did because that's not good enough. So you're
Right,
like,
exactly.
I would think your need for them would need to be through the roof. So mine might be a little bit lower than yours. I'd probably still have them at like a 7.5 or an 8 on the scale.
It's a significant need. Yeah.
Because you want that definitive guy, which they don't. That I'll admit it. I still love Scoop, but isn't that weird? It's adjacent to what we're talking about. They just overhauled their assistant staff. They fired, I think, 3 assistants. That's weird to do after giving Chauncey Billups an extent. Like, doesn't that typically portend that the coach isn't on the most stable footing?
Yes.
And one of those coaches was apparently, like, that's the word, like, he was very responsible for Scoot Henderson's improvement this year. So, like, that's just another thing I find interesting. So maybe Portland needs Cooper Flagg more than even we're saying that they do.
Right. I think there is a need there. I'm probably slightly higher on Denny than you are, but I do agree with your overarching point of
you could tell me Denny Avdia will be, even if you sat here and said Denny Avdia is going to be more valuable, better than Lauri Markkanen, I might actually agree with you. Like you could say that. That's still just not good enough to be like, well, that's the guy.
Yeah, I agree. So it's actually a pretty big need. Like even if Denny tops out, and like what is it? I hate to put stats on something like that, but like let's say he turns into like a 24-8 guy. 5 assists, whatever. Like all-star caliber player. Cool. You're absolutely right. That's not your number 1 guy.
Right. And so so you have Washington and as your 1, and then like you had Brooklyn as 2. I have Utah as 1 and Brooklyn as my 2. Do they need to be?
Oh, did you want me to keep track of like?
Not keep track. This is all. We'll pick our top team at the end, although you kind of said yours already.
I have mine. Full spoiler. Yep.
But like, do they need it more than Utah or Brooklyn? I guess I'll ask. Do the Blazers need it? Sorry. Do they need Cooper Flagg more than Brooklyn or Utah?
No, I do think Utah needs more than the
I agree.
Blazers. Yeah.
Do they need it more?
The Nets is so weird, right? Because again, the free agency element is there. No,
I'm
they
gonna
probably
say
don't.
I'm gonna say they don't because I at least have someone I can point to and say maybe Scoot is still that top 15, top 10 guy one day.
Yeah.
Just barely though. Like that's a fascinating team. And by the way, of all the teams that need Cooper Flagg the most, or I just want Cooper Flagg to go to a team that has, or whichever team gets Cooper Flagg, please surround him with shooting. Like I don't want to see Cooper Flagg on this version of the Blazers. I don't want to see him on this year's version of the current personnel with the Raptors. Like that's like just if you get Cooper Flagg, please, I beg you, surround him with shooters.
Is that your segue to the next team?
Speaking of needing shooters.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going Chicago there because they had shooting.
Dallas started the season with Luka Doncic and ended the season with a 1.8% chance of landing Cooper Flagg. I don't really know what to make of any of that. This is interesting, right?
I mean, sure.
Well, because I think you could say they don't have their best play because their long-term view is 2 to 3 years. They don't have anyone that you point to and say that's going to be, we know, the face of our team, of our direction 3 years from now. But they're also looking to be immediately competitive, and they have a lot of talent on this roster that can help them do that.
So they need him to trade him.
No. Wouldn't you say, well, because with Kyrie missing a huge chunk of next year, couldn't they need him to actually use him?
Yeah, well, sure. But let's look at it through the perspective of them who are like, oh, yeah, we need veterans. Is that going to fly? Is that going to weigh the...
No, and then also it's, it does Cooper Flagg nudge. You have Derek Lively, so I'm sure you're trying to play all three of them at once, but it probably nudges AD back towards the direction of the 5. And then does he request a trade when that happens? So
I want that to happen. And by the way, look, in terms of need, I'm just not going to put them particularly high for one reason. They don't deserve to be high here. They don't. They made their bed. They're in it. I feel bad for Mavs fans to say that because I understand why Mavs fans would root the ever-living hell out of those 1.8% odds. But I'm sorry, your organization needs to suffer for a couple of years.
And the other thing, too, is just like, if they're going to get this pick just to trade it, like that almost seems like really bad karma, too. Because I don't know that.
Imagine, look, I'm sorry, just imagine he comes in and he might have like a slightly higher body fat percentage than what they expect. And they're like, nope, can't keep you. Let's see what we can get. That'd be fantastic. I need that leaked immediately if that happens.
Is there any chance, just because now that Patrick Dumont is kind of like, at least through indirect sources, like distance himself from the Luka Doncic, like he didn't realize what the fallout was going to be. Nico promised him it wouldn't be this bad or whatever. Is there a scenario where if they won the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, that it forces them to rebuild? Now they are trading AD. Nico Harrison's probably getting canned at that point. So if you're a Mavs fan, maybe you should root to win the lottery regardless, I guess. But if you're a Mavs fan, if you're really looking to be spared from the Nico Harrison experience or whatever this direction is, you probably need to root for the, of course, we already mentioned what the flip side of that could be is if Nico Harrison still has the agency to carry out his vision, Cooper Flagg is probably playing elsewhere.
Yeah. It's a good question though. I'm going to rank them low. I'm not going to consider them in any serious capacity.
Our next team is your Chicago Bulls.
Stop
with a 1.7% chance of winning the lottery. If they win the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, like, aren't they trading him for CJ McCollum or something? Like, how does this work?
I think you're aiming high with the CJ
there. In theory, though, they need him, right? Because I like Buzelis, I like Kobe White, but like none of those
slide right in as long as they don't go out and do something stupid as re-signing Josh Giddey to ridiculous money and have him become the starting point guard. Yeah.
So where do they land for you?
I mean, look, this is an organization who should be somewhat high on the list in terms of need because this is a front office that doesn't want to build through the draft. They want to build actively from the middle, which is beyond insanity. So from the pure perspective of the fan base, and look, we have to acknowledge that the Chicago fans are very, very passionate about their sports teams. I do think that there's a big need here to just satisfy the fan base. For the Bulls themselves, because they're as competent as they are, the need isn't big because I could see this ending poorly for poor Cooper Flagg.
They're kind of in like Portland territory for me because I'm looking at this from just like the direction and like who can you identify as the guiding force, and maybe having a player like I think what does make front office jobs harder, as much as we meme the shit out of the ones that might do it incompetently, if you have someone that you can point to and say, well, this is at least the player around whom I'm going to try and structure everything moving forward. Right. It makes it easier for you to take risks or for you to even hit the reset button or convince ownership to let you hit the reset button. Right. I think, honestly, you could make a case to me that Chicago needs Cooper Flagg more than Brooklyn needs Cooper Flagg because at least you trust the front office.
That's fair.
In Brooklyn to rebuild under their own cognizance.
Yeah. It's almost like one of those situations where, it forces change, as you said. But that's the thing. I keep hearing that Michael Reinsdorf was going to take over from Jerry Reinsdorf is even less creative than his dad, which is saying something. So it's like, and again, ownership, as we know, plays a much larger role in the success of NBA teams that we are willing to say out loud. For a team like the Bulls, I'm just sort of like, okay, even if you get Cooper Flagg, my next question is, how are you going to fuck it up?
That doesn't change their need, though.
Sure, that's true. That is true. All right. If we isolate it to that, their need is bigger than Brooklyn's, yes.
So that would, if their need's bigger than Brooklyn's, I have them at number 2 behind Utah. That's kind of wild that we're here with Chicago. Like did it to themselves. Our final team, they have a 0.8% chance of winning the lottery. Again, only 13 teams here because of the way that the draft obligations shake out with Atlanta and San Antonio. The Sacramento Kings, with a 0.8% chance. Domas Sabonis is planning on checking in this offseason. That was the reporting, and seeing how things are and what the future is.
As he should, yes.
Look, if he doesn't want to play on Bulls West, I think that says something about his character, and it probably says something good about his character, to be quite honest. But
he's going to play in Bulls East if Ricky O'Donnell has his way, because it feels like that's the next shoe to drop.
Cooper Flagg for Sabonis, is that what's going to Chicago Bulls win the lottery?
That'd be the funniest thing ever, because then you get the Lithuanian superstar, I say, as a term.
He's all NBA.
All NBA.
Yeah.
And like, he's just the next Vooch era center, really, just better, slightly better, but
he's artisanal Vucevic. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Oh man, look again. Yeah, they need this, but incompetent ownership. I have a hard time like rewarding a team for like, oh, you need this player the most, when they know they're just dumbasses. And
the other thing too is that even if you don't feel good about Sacramento's direction and those in charge, like their best player is just way better than Chicago's best player right now, even with as flawed as the roster is. Like Sabonis is, whatever you think about him in the playoffs, whatever you think about his defense and the way that forces how you defend with him on the floor, he's really fucking good. And so the need isn't quite there. But if like before the lottery, it comes out like he wants out, well, it's like, what the hell's going on here? So then their need would increase. So their need is high, but there's also, like, if you get Cooper Flagg, I just don't know, like, what are you tearing it down then? Because him and Sabonis isn't an intuitive fit. DeRozan is still on this roster. I would be even more confused about what the Kings would do, because this pick will basically, if they don't win, I mean, if they're not going to land, it's top 12 protected, it goes to Atlanta.
Right.
So you might not even be worried about them having a first round pick. It would be so bizarre. I just don't know what they would do. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because if you won the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, that's an objectively good thing. I don't know how they would respond to it. If you told me they traded that pick, I'd believe you. If you told me they just tried to plop him in and play him with everyone, I believe you. If you told me that they traded Sabonis, I'd believe you. Could tell me anything and I would believe you.
Yeah, agreed. And that is always the sign of such a greatly led organization.
Well, optionality is a good thing unless it's like nonsensical. And like the Kings have, so yeah, it would somehow getting Cooper Flagg. There's a scenario where getting Cooper Flagg would inject the direction with some coherence.
Yeah, right.
But
exactly.
because
Like
it's the Kings, it feels like it would add to the incoherence of what they've now built.
You're not wrong. Yes, it's Bulls West, as you said before, in terms of like it can force a direction, but at the same time, it's just not that optimistic. Man, where do I have them?
They're not in my top 3.
No,
like I think my top 3 are Utah at 1, Chicago at 2. And this is nothing to do with deserve. If we were to do like the team that deserves it the most, like who is the most ethical tanker this year? And it would be that team.
Yeah, who is that? I don't even know. Who is the most ethical
I think
team?
you could argue San Antonio was the most ethical lottery team because they're only like
That's true.
because of the Wemby injury. They
Right.
might have wound up in the lottery anyway, though. They weren't
Right.
necessarily like playing proximate there. Let's get to some Cooper Flagg superlatives. Let's do that. So,
Okay.
what's the team that needs Cooper Flagg the most? You have the Wizards.
I have the Wizards.
I have the Jazz, but I think there's like real cases for the Bulls or the Nets there.
Yep.
Which team deserves, or which fan base, if you want to frame it, that deserves Cooper Flagg the most?
Fan base, Bulls. Because all the shenanigans that they've been put through for so many years and just the volume fans that are there. Like, because again, I can feel bad for Washington fans, but there are like 4 of them. So it's like, that's, it's not that big of a deal. Whereas with the Bulls, there are at least a couple million, although they are dwindling by the second. So maybe they will be down to 4 by the time of the draft.
Yeah, I think you could. I wouldn't be for the same reasons, but I think the answer would be between Chicago, Charlotte, or Washington for me. I'll just say Washington to go with some variety from you.
Strictly because of like the fan base. Yes.
Yeah, they deserve Cooper Flagg the most.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the worst Cooper Flagg landing spot?
Probably the Bulls. Like, honestly, the Bulls fans deserve him the most, but the organization is the one that deserves him the least. Where that is a situation where I just do not trust how they're going to handle it. They just fired the shooting coach, Peter Patton, who turned the entire shooting profile around, which has been a problem for years. And then they fired him because he wasn't a yes man for Arturas Karnisovas. So, like, why would I trust that organization to do well with Cooper Flagg? Answer is I don't. So, like, deserves the least? Chicago Bulls.
I'm going to say the Sixers. I just don't.
They're up there.
I guess if you told me that they were going to hit the reset button, I'm okay with it then. But because I don't know that they would do that, you're either trading Cooper Flagg, and then I'm wondering, okay, well, who are you trading him for? Right. Or you're just trying to plop him in there, and I don't love like the Embiid, Flagg, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. It's just weird. I would watch it because it could be like a car crash theory maybe. What would be the most unfair Cooper Flagg landing spot? San Antonio, right?
Right, obviously.
Yeah. I think you could make a case for Houston though, right? Like that could be.
You can make a case, but it wouldn't hold up in court.
What would be the quirkiest? Where it's what is, you don't hate it, you don't love it. What does this look like?
Probably Sacramento. Like, because what the hell is that?
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Houston. I don't know if, and then imagine if they don't make a trade and then it's just
Toronto is a good one too there.
Toronto's also a candidate for sure. Yeah. But Houston with, we have Cooper Flagg and Ahmed Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason. And even if they make a move, imagine if they then turned around, somehow traded for Giannis without including Cooper Flagg. That would be like wild too. That would just be bizarre. Which team would be most likely to trade the Cooper Flagg pick if they want it?
Dallas.
I think I'm going to go with Philly. That does.
Yeah.
I don't feel
both
great.
I don't think either is a bad choice.
I don't know if I have any other superlative categories. No. I think we went through them all.
I thought those were good. Kudos.
This was fun, Mort. So here's to Utah or Washington. Those are the teams we've decided need Cooper Flagg the most. Yes. But also with honorable mentions to Brooklyn. And you're right about Chicago. They need him, but I don't want to see him in Chicago. I don't bias like that. But although Buzelis was fun as a rookie. Fun. So it's maybe you could trust them to do the right thing. I don't, but maybe you could. I don't know.
Wow, that is just injecting false hope into a
yeah, they're going to trade him for Sabonis without including Vooch in that package, too. So you're going to have Vooch and Sabonis as your core moving forward. Can you tell our subscribers where they can find you and all the work that you do?
Yes, I am currently writing a ton over at Yahoo Sports, doing some off-season primers and saying goodbye to teams that get bounced in the playoffs. So you can find my work there. I usually share a ton of them on Blue Sky, but here's the thing. I've been so busy doing a lot of life stuff that I haven't even had time to be on Blue Sky a whole lot. So if you just go to Yahoo or just go to Google, search Yahoo and Morton, my archive is going to come up and you go read out of there. Then you can find my work over at the NBA podcast. And if you're Danish by any chance, you can go find it at Buzzerbeater.
Until next time, and as always, we with the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible Frank Ntilikina.